to the 10th Annual St. Pete Science Festival. This is our first year virtual. If you've been with us some today, welcome back. If you haven't and this is your first presentation, welcome. You're in for a special treat. My name is Allison Garrett, and I work for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And I have the pleasure today of introducing someone that I've worked with over the years, one of our own NOAA staff, Dr. Jenny Litz. And I want to mention during Jenny's presentation, there is a button underneath where you're going to see her video, and you can click to submit questions there. So please do. Jenny is going to talk to us today about bottlenose dolphins, and she is a biologist, an expert, and so we're super excited to hear what she has to say. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you so much, Allison, and hi, everybody. I'm super excited to be here today. I've never been to the St. Pete Science Festival in person. I live in Miami and work out of our NOAA office in Miami, so I'm excited I could join you all virtually today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, and hopefully you are seeing my title slide now.
We are. We're seeing it.
Great. So I am going to talk to you primarily about bottlenose dolphins today and how you can all do your part to protect them. But I also want to give you a little bit of background on what our program does. So we'll do a little bit of an intro there. So at the NOAA Southeast Fisheries Science Center in our Marine Mammal Program, our goal is to provide the best available science to help conserve and manage marine mammal species that live here in the Southeast United States. By Southeast, we cover Texas all the way around the Gulf of Mexico and up the Atlantic to North Carolina. And we also cover the U.S. waters around Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So our goal is to collect all the best available science we can to protect and conserve marine mammals in those waters. And to really understand the health and the status of the different marine mammal populations living there. So we want to know how many of each species there are and what the division are between the different populations. So where they're living, how many are those populations stable or not? What are the impacts of humans on those populations? And is there a way that we can mitigate our impact on these animals to help them be healthier and have more stable populations, and investigate mortalities of marine mammals. What do they die from? How many are dying? And again, all for the reasons of getting at how can we mitigate any impacts that we have on those animals. And the pictures along the bottom are some of the whale species that live in the Southeast that we work with. On the left are the pilot whales. We also work a lot with the North Atlantic right whale populations. And in the Gulf of Mexico, there is an endangered species that was just listed recently, which is the Gulf of Mexico Birdie's whale. And the picture all the way on the right is the fluke of a sperm whale. We have different tools that we use in our toolbox to study all these different species. And some of these tools include research cruises on our big NOAA ships that go out, sometimes we're out 200 nautical miles from shore. We also use NOAA aircraft to do aerial surveys for coastal species. And if we're working with bottlenose dolphins in the bays, which is a lot of what I'll talk about today, we just do work on the small boats in the estuaries. Sometimes we use acoustics, so we'll use hydrophones, which are like microphones that can go underwater, to listen to whales and use those data. We also collect samples to look at genetics, contaminants, and we, as I mentioned, will respond to any stranded, dead, or injured marine mammals to collect data that way as well. And then briefly, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a view of what our research cruises look like, because a lot of kids are interested in that. This is one of our main research ships, the NOAA Gordon Gunter. And when we are surveying for offshore species, you can see the map on the bottom is the Gulf of Mexico, and the black lines are our little zigzag pattern track lines that the ship goes along. And we are both looking and listening for whale and dolphin species, and the little dots there represent the different species we saw on that particular cruise. And this is just to give you an idea of what does it look like when you're living in a research ship. This is not the Royal Caribbean. This is not Carnival Cruise Lines. This is a research ship, but I do consider this one of the fancier research ships. So on the top left, you'll see 2 bunk beds. So that's for 2 researchers in one room. And this one is fancy because it has a little refrigerator in the room. Not all of them have that. And over here, you'll see two scientists on their rest time reading books, and there's one little desk in the room. And then down here is the galley. We feel very lucky on our research cruises because we don't have to cook for ourselves. There's a cook who feeds us 3 meals a day with snacks available. So that's what it looks like in the galley. But again, the main focus of today's talk is dolphins. I want you to be aware, though, that we do have about 26 different species of dolphins and whales in the Southeast U.S., including lots of different kinds of dolphins. Today, I'm going to talk about bottlenose dolphins, which is the most common, closest to shore, and the one most people are familiar with, and that's pictured in the upper left corner. But we also have striped dolphins, spinner dolphins, spotted dolphins, lots of different kinds of dolphins that live in our offshore waters. So how do we study the bottlenose dolphins that live in the bay, sounds, and estuaries? We have in Florida bottlenose dolphins living in just about every bay that we have looked in, including Tampa Bay, Sarasota Bay, and today I'm going to talk about our research in Biscayne Bay in Miami. In Miami, we've been collecting photo ID data on this population since 1990, consistently since 1994. And we have over 400 dolphins in our catalog, with about 300 that have been seen in the last 10 years. And some of the things we've already looked at are the social structure. We've looked at their genetics to understand the population division between the animals that live in the bay and the animals that live south in Florida Bay or outside the bay. And we've looked at the persistent organic pollutants, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. This is our study area in Miami. This is Card Sound Bridge down at the bottom, which is on the way to the Florida Keys. And we go all the way north to Haulover Inlet in North Miami. And the northern half of our study area is much more developed than the southern half. This is where the city of Miami is, the port of Miami, where the cruise ships are, the Miami River outflow. Much of the shoreline here is human-made seawalls. There's very little natural mangrove shoreline. Southern Biscayne Bay, however, looks a lot different. It does have that natural mangrove shoreline. A lot of it's protected as part of Biscayne National Park, but there is some influence from agriculture, from farming, and from industry in South Bay as well. The tool we use most commonly to study bottlenose dolphin in bays are photo identification. And the way that works, I've circled the dolphin out here in the water, the dorsal fin, and we go out in a small boat with a camera with a very big lens and try to take close-up pictures of the dolphin's dorsal fins. Now, we do need research permits to have permission to do this because it does entail following the dolphins to get those specific pictures, and we'll talk more about that later. But we'll go out in a single day and collect thousands of photographs of dolphins, as well as lots of data sheets about the group and how many animals are in the group. When we get back to the laboratory, we need to take all of the pictures, and we want a perfectly perpendicular picture of that dorsal fin. And we crop it to the dorsal fin, and it's kind of like a matching game. You can see some examples here where each dolphin has different marks on its fin. Most of them are marked. There are some animals that don't have marks and can't be matched, especially when they're young. But most of them will have little notches along what we call the trailing edge. I don't know if you can see my cursor here. And every now and then you'll see a little notch on the leading edge. So those little individual marks are how we can follow animals over time, and all of that data gets entered into our database. And this is an example of what the sighting history of one animal can look like over time. This is a sighting history of dolphin number 8. She was first sighted in 1990, and these top two pictures show that animal in 1994, and then again 20 years later in 2015. And you can see how some of those notches have persisted over time to make that dolphin recognizable. Now, dolphin number 8 has been seen 94 times with at least 9 calves and 4 grand calves so far. And the picture on the bottom is number 8's third calf, which is number 213 with her calf. The sighting history for number 8, you'll see that she's been seen through our whole study area, but most of her sightings are in that northern half of Biscayne Bay. This is another example. This is dolphin number 72 that has a really distinctive fin because she lost part of her fin at one point. So it has this triangle shape. And again, the top two pictures are the same dolphin almost 20 years apart, or sorry, almost 25 years apart. And then down below is that dolphin with one of her calves. And then this is her sighting history. You'll see that we've seen her quite a bit, but never north of the Rickenbacker Causeway. This dolphin tends to spend most of her time in the southern part of the bay. One of the things we looked at is the level of contaminants in their blubber. We took remote DART biopsy samples and got a very tiny plug of blubber and then analyzed that blubber for contaminants. In this case, we looked at PCBs, which are an industrial compound. And this map shows each dolphin plotted by the center of their home range, the center of where they've been sighted. And then the colors match the level of contaminants in their blubber, with red being the highest level of PCBs and green being the lowest. And you'll see this trend where the animals that tended to be seen more in the north part of the bay had higher contaminants than those animals that were seen more in the south part of the bay. And we see the same trend in this map on the right of contaminants in the sediments, PCBs in the sediments in Biscayne Bay, with the highest PCBs in the sediments in the north getting lower as you head towards Florida Bay. So this showed that even though it's the same population of dolphins, they can have very different level of contaminants based on where they're feeding within their home range, and that they're reflecting the amount of contaminants in their habitat. So dolphins in these kind of estuaries, and particularly urban estuaries, are affected by a lot of stressors, not just the dolphins in Miami, but the dolphins everywhere. And some of those stressors include development along the shoreline, some habitat loss in Biscayne Bay, for example. We've had a big problem lately with seagrass die-off. Boat traffic and harassment can be a stressor to dolphins, noise, contaminants, and we'll talk a little more about fishing gear and marine debris. So for the rest of the talk, I want to focus more on what can we do to help eliminate some of these stressors or help reduce these stressors that these dolphins are faced with every day. And the first one is when you go out on a boat, view dolphins responsibly. So I've been on boats. I know how exciting it is when you're out on a boat for the day and you suddenly see dolphins. You weren't expecting to see dolphins, and it's really exciting and everybody wants to see them. And we totally understand that. But daily and chronic disturbance from vessels, from people on boats trying to see them, and also swimmers trying to swim with dolphins, that kind of chronic disturbance can have short and long-term impacts on the dolphins themselves. It can lead to injury or death from boat strikes. It can change their social structure and their daily behavior. They can move to a different habitat trying to avoid the boats. So what we ask you to do when you're on a boat is view those dolphins from at least 50 yards away. Put the vessel, the boat's engine in neutral if the dolphins come up to you, and make sure you don't try to swim with dolphins or chase dolphins in your boat. And those activities are considered harassment and they are illegal, and you can be fined for it. And there is a phone number here to report behavior if you see that. Feeding dolphins can also be really harmful. Some people do try to feed dolphins, and this changes their behavior and it increases the chance that they'll have an interaction with fishing gear. And that can sometimes be an entanglement in fishing gear or an ingestion of fishing gear. When people feed dolphins, they start to associate people with food and they change their behavior. Instead of hunting naturally, they'll go and approach people for food, which helps increase this risk of entanglement from fishing gear and other injuries. Monofilament line, fishing line is not very forgiving. If dolphins get wrapped in this line, it can actually start to cut through their skin or through their blubber over time, particularly if it's a young animal that continues to grow. The pictures on the bottom here are fishing gear that was found in the stomachs of animals. So sometimes fishing gear can get lodged in the digestive tract as well if they, say, swallow a fish that might have gear still attached, and that's also a problem. So we do have some dolphin-friendly fishing tips as well. If you like to fish or you're out with your family and friends fishing, instead of throwing your leftover bait overboard, especially if dolphins are near, it's better to reuse that leftover bait or freeze it and use it later. Reel in your line if dolphins are near. Some dolphins that have been fed a lot have been taught to come up and try to take fish off of fishing lines, and that's part of how they end up ingesting that gear. So if you see dolphins around while you're fishing, reel in your line and wait for them to pass or maybe move somewhere else. Inspect your gear as much as you can to try to avoid any unwanted breaks in your line, and never cast near dolphins. We also recommend you use circle hooks or corrodable hooks so that if a dolphin or a turtle or any other wildlife accidentally swallows that hook, it should corrode instead of staying in the digestive tract. And importantly, make sure you recycle your fishing line and put all your trash away to keep that out of the water. Marine debris is a fancy word for what scientists call trash, right? Marine debris is just trash in the water, and trash in the water is a huge and growing issue. And these are some pictures of what entanglements in marine debris might look like. So the top picture is actually a dolphin that swam through a men's extra large Speedo bathing suit. So the dolphin actually swam its head right through the 2 leg holes of this bathing suit. This was a dolphin that was part of the photo ID studied population in Sarasota Bay, and it was seen after 4th of July weekend with this bathing suit stuck on it. Since it was a dolphin that was part of their photo ID study area, they were able to follow that dolphin over time, and that bathing suit did not move at all. And if left alone, the animal would eventually get some skin problems and likely an infection. So the teams of researchers actually had to go out with NOAA's permission and help and catch this dolphin and remove the bathing suit from the dolphin and release it back on its way. Likewise, the picture on the bottom, this was a rubber flat round strap. It was like one loop that this young dolphin had swum through in Georgia. And then as the dolphin continued to grow, the strap got tighter and tighter and tighter, and that's the scar tissue that you see here. And we had to likewise go in to catch that dolphin and cut it free from this strap. And then the picture on the bottom left are different pieces of plastic that were found in the stomach of a particular stranded animal. So ingestion of some of this marine debris and trash is also a problem. We have found everything from soda cans to hard plastic to plastic bags in the stomachs of some of these animals. This was a picture I actually took off Facebook once, but I really liked it. It shows the most common 4 types of plastic that are being used. And I think if everyone in our country could kind of cut out their use of these 4 types of disposable plastic, it would go a really, really long way to keeping trash out of our oceans. So I've talked about some of these already, but I want to reiterate, how can you help the dolphins? And so these are some of the main ways that you and the general public can help wild dolphins. Do not attempt to feed them or feed them. Make sure you admire them from a distance. Get really excited when you see them. It is really cool, but give them their space so they're not being followed by people all day. Make sure you recycle your fishing line and remove your trash. Follow the dolphin-friendly fishing tips. Balloons are my biggest pet peeve. I hate the use of any balloons outside because I see too many of them get released. And you remember that picture of the research ship that I showed you. Sometimes we've been 200 nautical miles out to sea and we see balloons floating in the ocean. They're everywhere in the ocean. So try not to use balloons outside and definitely do hold on to them. And we have our phone number here. So if you do see stranded or injured dolphins or whales, you can call 877-WHALE-HELP to report that sighting so that we can get the appropriate researchers out to investigate that. Now, I know this talk was geared mainly towards students in 4th and 5th grade, and we get a lot of questions about, how do you become a marine biologist? And so I did want to spend just a couple slides on that. This is my personal advice to students. When you get a little bit older in high school and in college, I highly recommend volunteering and taking internships where you can. It's a great way for you to meet people in the field, but also get some exposure to what those scientists do every day and learn what kind of science you like or maybe you don't like. But it's a great way to get experience. And then make sure when you get those volunteer opportunities and internships that you make the best of it. Work hard and don't be afraid to do the boring stuff. I did a ton of data entry and filing papers for years, but you know what? I learned a lot about data management while I was doing that data entry. Study hard in school. Obviously, math and science are really important to scientists, but you know what? I spend half my day reading and writing papers, so don't forget the reading and writing. And don't be afraid to follow your dreams, but make sure you take advantage of new opportunities. When I went to college for marine science, everyone kept telling me I would never get a job in marine science. But stick with it. And if you don't get the internship that you applied to, but someone offers you a different one, take it, because you might learn something really cool from it. Now, I do have some really fun, exciting days at work where I get to go out on small boats and see whales, or run out to the beach and see a whale, or go cut up a dead whale. That's pretty cool. But most of my days, in all honesty, to give you the truth, look like this: sitting at my desk on the phone, crunching data. For about every day you spend on the boat, you'll spend 3, 4, 5 days in the office analyzing that data. So something to keep in mind. I want to thank you guys for your time, and I can't wait to see what exciting questions that I'm sure you guys have all typed in.
Jenny, thank you so much. Dr. Jenny Litz with NOAA. We do have some questions for you. Cole has a question, and I don't know if you'll know the answer, so we may have to get back to him. How big is a blue whale's heart?
Oh, that one I do not know, but I imagine it must be pretty big.
Okay.
Let's see. Can you see me, or am I still screen sharing?
I can see you.
Okay, perfect. So what I would say to that is, I don't know how big a blue whale's heart is, but a dolphin's heart is about this big. So you can imagine a blue whale heart must be.
We'll see if we can look that up, Cole. That's a great question. Jenny, I have another one. Kason wants to know, are dolphins the smartest ocean animals?
Oh, that's a tough one. They are pretty smart, dolphins and whales, and they have a pretty big brain to body sized ratio, which is a measure a lot of scientists use to look at critical thinking and how smart they might be. So I can't tell you if they're the absolute smartest, but I think they're pretty smart.
You're maybe a little biased too, I'm guessing.
I might be a little biased, but sometimes when I'm out on the boat trying to take their picture and they're avoiding us, maybe I think they might be smarter than me. So
That's right. Andrea and Annalise, what is your favorite type of dolphin? You mentioned 26 species. What's your favorite type?
Oh, my favorite type is the spinner dolphin. It's really fun to see them out when we're out in the deep water, because they'll pop up in the wake sometimes of the ship, and they just spin really fast and flop back down. And I think it looks like they're having a lot of fun. I agree with that.
Let's see. Anila, do dolphins communicate with other species? And if so, how?
Dolphin communication is not really my expertise. I'm not sure if we know that. I think they communicate with each other. There might be other species out there that can hear them, but I've never read or heard anything specifically looking at whether they're communicating with other species.
Okay. Ian wants to know, are different kinds of dolphins more friendly than others?
I guess it depends on how we define friendly, because they're not, I think some might be more curious than others. In terms of looking at different species, there are certain species that are have tighter social groups with each other than others. So like rough-toothed dolphins and pilot whales, for example, when they strand on the beach, they often come in together and they seem to have really tight social associations. But in terms of their interactions with us, I couldn't really say.
Okay. Aiden wants to know what the average amount of dolphins, how many dolphins do you see on average when you are out?
Ooh, that's a good question. So for us in Biscayne Bay, some days we don't see any. Most days we might have 2 or 3 sightings, and those sightings might be maybe 2 animals up to 20 or 30 animals. So some days, we might see 30 or 40 dolphins in a day. Some days we only see 4 or 5, and that's just in Miami.
Okay. Denise wants to know, how large can a dolphin grow? And maybe we'll stick it to a bottlenose dolphin since you focused on that. How large? Yeah.
Gosh, I don't have the exact number. I want to say it's pretty close to 7 or 8 feet. I tend to think in centimeters more than feet, but I'm sure we could look that up for you.
Okay. All right. Well, I really, really appreciate, Jenny, you being here and sharing all this great information. I really do want to reiterate the slides that Jenny showed about what you can do in terms of marine debris and trash. We do have some more questions coming in, and Jenny, we're going to see if we can figure out how to get some of the last questions to our speakers today in order to get those answered. But we really appreciate you being with us today, Jenny.
All right, great. Thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, I'm going to take a small break, but in about 5 minutes, we're going to be back at 1:30, and we have a very exciting glass blowing demonstration. So you don't want to miss it. 1:30, glass blowing. My name is Allison Garrett, and you are at the St. Pete Science Festival.